Hello, this is a prepaid collect call from an inmate at the county jail. This call is subject to recording and monitoring. To accept charges, press 1. To refuse charges, press 2.
Well, good morning, Sydney. How's your day going so far? Well, that's what's expected when you're incarcerated, but hey, you're doing the best you can with what you got, so we're rooting for you out here. Oh yeah, I've been hearing the things about the women's prison, and I just recently got word of the vulnerability stuff, and when there's relationship between a prison official and an inmate, then we got an issue there. And it kind of makes you wonder. But, for the longest time, I just kind of took it for granted that they would follow policy and procedure. And hearing people tell me that things were being abused over there and weren't properly being cared for medically, it just caused me to do some more diving into the matter. And I know there was a lot of retaliation, and it was mainly against you guys because you could get over there and you could tell your parents that something's going on, and they could report it to the news or to their legislator or even contact the prison officials about it. And then suddenly you'd be getting written up for a lot of different things. And that was happening to me quite a bit. And so I actually wrote a letter and I said, quit picking on them. If you want to pick on somebody, it's me. I'm the one who's probing. I'm the one who's looking for stuff. And that's pretty much what they started doing. They just came after me very fierce. But when you're telling the truth, it's easy to get support. It's easy to get proof. And it's can be easy, but most of the time it's a little difficult and takes some time. But you can get change in there. And all the banging I've been doing has caused some change along the way, but it doesn't mean I quit, and it doesn't mean I accept that as a nice little resolution to the bigger picture. And we want to keep putting that out there, but we just don't want it to come back and bite you in the butt. So I can talk to your support group, let them know that we have to go about this in a civil manner so that it doesn't come back on you. And with them eliminating solitary confinement out there for punishment, that definitely helps. And the fact that we're affecting their budget, because I know this current governor wants to throw all this money into the penal system, but I just don't see it happening. Now, of course, I don't want to see them eliminate prisons. That's kind of dumb. But we do need to make the public aware that the prison system has a lot of leeway and there's a lot of abuse going on in there. Yeah, well, the jails, I would say personally, are worse than the prison. So when you walk out of there, as strange as it may sound, things might get a little bit better. Well, mainly the jails are supposed to be a temporary spot, so they're not really looking to giving it a big budget, staffing it heavily.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
You should be in there for just a little while and then leave. And the prisons need bigger staff, better medical, and the food and resources should be greater. So we'll keep pushing for that. But I would say make a journal of what you're going through in there. Well, you never know. You know, if we don't do anything, it's not
You have
going
30
to
seconds remaining.
it's not going to improve. So we have to do something. And every little thing that you do to fight the wrongs that goes on in there is a step forward. Might be slow, but it's a step forward. Well, okay. Well, thanks for the call, and you take care of yourself. Oh, yeah, definitely. Okay. Well, goodbye.
Thank you for using Inmate Call. Goodbye.
Hello. Welcome to AQS Inmate Call. I am your host, Joel Wilborn. And as you can tell from that telephone conversation, there was a new incident that was brought to my attention, which I've heard about through the years, but never really was affected by it until just recently. Now, just so you know what's going on with me, I have people in the prison recommend somebody to me, somebody who wants to share a story. And as a prison advocate, it's my responsibility to share the information that the prison is ignoring. Like an incident where somebody could say that their friend is suicidal and is really scaring her that something might happen. And when she voices her concern, they brush it off. And she goes about the business of trying to do what she can to help this individual. And so if she calls me or sends me an email or a letter and voices her concern, I'll reach out to the person. And if the person's willing to share the story or talk about it, I'll do that. And I do that quite often because there's a lot of people that are just frustrated. They're sitting in prison and nobody's listening to them. And I know there's a lot of violent crimes out there, and there's people in prison that we just don't care to talk to. But when it comes to mistreatment, prison officials could say this person is not respected by the community and we can treat them however we want. And that's been popping up in the news a lot lately. It's just that we have these harsh prisons, but these folks deserve to be there and so be it. But they just aren't aware of the intricate abuse that goes on in there. But the people who are in the prison, they know. And when they talk to prison officials, they're ignored. When they talk to family, the family gets frustrated. And that's where I come in. Broadcast the information to you listeners. And some of the folks, you can look at my episodes and you can get stories directly from the person who's in the prison. These are the ones that I like. I like when the people speak out. It's harder for me to convince people through as a third party participant that something's going on in there because it's more like it's just hearsay or the people are lying to you and you really have no way of verifying this. And that's reasonable. I can understand that. I'm the same way. If I hear things coming out of a neighborhood or household or a business, I'm a little skeptical too. It'd be nice to show some facts. But the main thing is just to kind of spark your interest. What is going on in there? How can you check on it? And it's not easy to verify this stuff because prisons are given this little freedom bit of and privacy. So they're allowed to do things legally that a lot of the state agencies are not allowed to do. And in order to change that, we'll have to change the law. And for a lot of us, that can be quite frustrating, but it's something that we keep pushing at. And we want to make sure that everybody, including prisoners, violent offenders, or minor offenders, are treated like human beings. And patience is definitely is a virtue in prison advocacy and prison reform. You got to keep pounding at the door and you just got to hope for the best. And when I broadcast this stuff, of course, it's not good news to the people who hear it. It's not certainly not good news to the prison officials who are involved with this. So what I like to do is get to the point where I have my own personal story. And that means that they do something that I can share with you, the public, on a personal basis. Now, when I met a young lady in the prison and we developed a rapport, we put in a marriage application. And once it got to the superintendent's desk, I was banned from speaking to anybody in the prison because I was preying on vulnerable people. Now, I had proposed to a person years ago, and then she broke it off. She met another woman. And then I proposed to another person years ago, and then she broke it off. And that's normal. People get into relationships, and relationships flourish, or sometimes they fizzle out. One of the reasons we date is to just find out if this person is right for us. And I get to the point where these people are just feeling down and out. They like the idea that there's somebody on the outside waiting for them, dedicated to them. And then as the time comes, it's more like, this is not really what I was looking for, or the ride was fun, or I've learned a lot more. And for me, that's fine. So when I met this current fiance, they were pretty much telling her that we don't approve of this marriage. And it's a legal marriage because we're both consenting adults. We qualify under the state of Washington. So, in order to stop this, the Department of Corrections has to come up with something that's reasonable, that even the state would agree with. And preying on vulnerable people, that I just kind of targeted this woman, on paper, that sounds good. But there's a lot more involved in it. So they're telling me I'm banned from communicating with everybody because I'm preying on vulnerable people. Of course, the people that are recommended to me are the ones that are they just kind of come to the end of their rope, and they have no other place to turn. I'm like the last resort. Anybody's familiar with that TV series, The A Team? That was a group of people that came out to help folks that had just run out of options. They had gone to law enforcement, they'd gone to community leaders, friends, anybody to try to help resolve a situation, and nobody was able to help them. So, as a last resort, they would call on the A Team. And that's the same concept that I use. I'm the last resort. And I'll connect people with legal representation, with other advocates, news media, whatever we kind of come up with to help the folks. And as I said, this is not good for the Washington Department of Corrections because they like to look at themselves as being a good legal system that abides by the rule of law and follows all policy and procedure. They don't want their bad side exposed. So with them saying that I am preying on all these people and that they're vulnerable, it kind of got me interested. Now, in one of the responses when I was saying why am I blocked from all this, and they came back, we want to protect our vulnerable population, and they cited a revised Code of Washington, which is the law in the state of Washington, and they recited the 74th chapter in the RCW, and so I started looking into it, and what it says in Chapter 74 is abuse of a vulnerable adult includes actions like intimidation, coercion, exploitation, or undue influence that cause harm or manipulate someone against their will. These prison officials are saying that's what I do. Now, legally, there could be mental abuse, like threats, humiliation, coercion, or isolation, exploitation, forcing or duly influencing someone to act against their past behavior or interest, and improper contact, harassment or communication that violates court orders or facility rules. Now, when I send email to folks, it's consensual. These people want to hear from me, and I want to talk to them. They want to talk to me. We both agree that we should do this. There's times I'll talk about something that makes somebody feel uncomfortable, and they'll tell me I don't want to talk anymore, and they'll block me, and I have no problem with that. And that's perfectly legal. If a person doesn't want to talk, they can remove you from the securest email, and they can refuse to receive mail. And since there's no incoming calls, they just won't call. That happens on occasion, and people in the prison are humans, just like the folks on the outside. So there's times that they get upset about something, or there's a subject that comes up they don't want to talk about. Hey, life goes on. But there's nobody that contacted the prison officials and told them they didn't want to have contact with me. They would tell me they didn't want to talk. Even my fiance, she broke up with me and then she came back later. But she didn't report me as abusing it, and it was not a consensual conversation until she changed her mind. So anybody who communicates with me, it's consensual. And there's a lot of people. There's more that want to talk to me that don't, but they don't report me. And so it was causing me to kind of think, what is this that's so bad that I can't visit this person? And prison officials have direct contact with folks. So if I send an email, the email is reviewed, and then it's sent to the individual that's in prison. There's always a third party when communication go in and out of a prison. If I were to send a letter to a friend in another state who's not incarcerated, that's written by me, put in the mail, sent to that person. And it could be a good, acceptable form of communication, or it could be something that's abusive. But that's up to the person who receives the letter, and that person can report it. But to say that I'm sending, harassing, or unduly influencing somebody when it's going through a supposedly secure facility just is baffling. It just doesn't make any sense. I can't visit without having a background and being approved. I can't marry without being approved. So sending mail through the U.S. Postal Service, sending email through Securus can't be abusive because the facility would block it. And they even said that something about funding. And we could say, I put money on the books for my loved one in prison, but the reality is that people send money to the prison who approves it and then puts it into the account of the incarcerated individual. That's a good system. It protects people. And as long as they do their job, everything's fine. But to say, we're just saying that you're abusing these people and we're going to block you, that violates so many rights. And so the state of Washington set up this law in Chapter 74 that states that if a person is being abused who is vulnerable, and that goes by the definition that I gave, that it could be that maybe a chronic illness makes them vulnerable, or they could be suicidal or something. But I can't affect them when I'm miles and miles away from them. I would say the most dangerous people are the people that are in direct contact with the folks. And so the state says this is so important that if a person who's caring for vulnerable people suspects, not necessarily has evidence or witnessed anything, but if a person suspects that a vulnerable adult is being abused, that person is obligated to report it to the authorities. And it could be adult protective services, like resolution unit or law enforcement, any of those. They're obligated to do that. And they just only on suspicion. And it's just to emphasize this, it's so important to the state of Washington that if somebody sees abuse and doesn't report it, they could be charged with a misdemeanor. It's a crime. And if somebody notices a caretaker who is witnessing abuse and doesn't report it, that person is guilty of a misdemeanor and could be charged with a crime. So for them to say, apparently been saying this for years, that I am preying or abusing vulnerable people means they have to report it. And by not reporting it, what's that say? And in my book, it shows that they're just using this as an excuse because they can't find anything else. I don't have a bad background. I have no complaints against me. They're just using this to justify blocking the marriage and blocking visitation and blocking all communication. I would like to see some evidence because a suspicion can get them to report it. If they don't report it, then yeah, they need to have evidence that I'm sending some emails. And this would be ones that they would catch, which would be what you expect them to do. So if I sent an email that was just against policy and legally was abusive, they could block my account. And if I ask, why'd you block my account? Well, of course, if they blocked it, they'd have to tell me. And then if I sent in an appeal and they presented me with maybe a copy of an email that I sent, and this email contains information that is forbidden by our policy or that is illegal, then it would be very difficult to win that appeal because I clearly violated it. Well, I've never gotten that type of evidence. It's just words that spew from their lips that I'm doing all of this. And so it was brought to my attention that there are vulnerable people that they are caring for down there. And so if anybody out there has a loved one who's in prison, who's considered vulnerable, look into that. Because if there's somebody out there that's sending harassing emails or threatening a person or definitely influencing a person, maybe saying I'll look over your or look out for the health and well-being of your sister, but you're going to have to pay me. You're going to have to send me some money to follow this through. Or maybe like the old gang things, you're going to have to send me money to protect your sister, because since you're not here helping her, terrible things could happen. They could be using this as abuse. And if it's getting through, the staff is allowing it to get through, then you can report that, hopefully, in your state. Just you need to look into that. And that's something that the prison system is abusing, because when in the state of Washington, if these people are sending me a letter saying you are abusing vulnerable people, but we're not going to report it, that's a crime. And if they're telling me I'm abusing people and I'm not, that's a crime. And if I get these notifications and I'm being accused of abusing vulnerable people and they're not reporting it, I can report them as committing a crime for failing to protect these vulnerable people from this abuse by not reporting it to the officials, like the Adult Protective Services or Complaint Resolution Unit or law enforcement. That's interesting, though. Why would the Department of Corrections put themselves on the line like that? And it's something I'm definitely going to pursue. And it's things like that we look for as prison reformists. Every lie can be exposed. And when I was in law enforcement, we would have this little simple saying that the criminals will get away with the crime the first time. It's really easy to get away. It's just kind of like dumb luck. But it's the second time that you get caught. And that has to apply in this situation too. Yeah, they've been doing this. They've been abusing people for a long time and hiding things, but they're going to slip up. And to block me, which they blocked me years ago, and they just kept pushing it out. Every time I would ask, give me some evidence, show this, prove this, they wouldn't do it. They would deflect it. Well, now they have a new reporting system where people can send directly to headquarters, who will review it and send it out to the appropriate people. Somebody along the way assigned 2 people to handle all my situations. If I applied for marriage, these 2 people would do it. If I applied for visitation, these 2 people would do it. If I sent in a appeal, these people would review it. Well, eventually, this trail of paperwork is going to catch up to them. And that's what I'm looking forward to. I've got a lot of emails from these people telling me I'm preying on vulnerable people, but not once did they say we're going to report it. So I can say that. I can actually report it myself. And I could use their email, which the latest one I've received, as evidence. I like evidence. I like presenting people with evidence. I don't want to accuse somebody, because if I get caught falsely accusing somebody, it ruins my reputation. And I don't feel good about it. And it's very hard to advocate for people when I'm guilty of something like that. So it's just something to think about. So hopefully, if you know somebody who's locked up and you're concerned about how they're being treated, look over the laws. And you can do some real good stuff with AI. You can ask for specific stuff and get led in the right direction. And even law enforcement's willing to work with you on something like this. You could call somebody up over there and just say, I just have a few questions about somebody I care about who's locked in prison. And things you wouldn't have thought about, like I wouldn't have thought about this Chapter 74 until they actually sent me, review this before you send in any more of your complaints. I did. And they just told me that they're violating the law. Dumb luck, I guess. But eventually it was going to come out, because you stick with it year after year after year. And finally, I get something that makes sense. And I'm sure you could do that just sticking with it. Well, thanks for tuning in. Go out, have yourself a magnificent day, and make beautiful memories for tomorrow.